Well, I think when you're looking at tape, that is going to hurt them. I think as a coach, we always say you're only as good as really what you're putting on tape, and I think that's for high school, college, and the pros. So that will hurt him. I think his level of play, as far as competition, will hurt him.
Right.
Coming from North Dakota, so it's not like a Florida or even a Boston College per se. But I think, it has hurt them. I think these kids have really gotten creative with their recruiting. And I think that's changed from when me and you were in high school and you had maybe one VHS tape that you could send out to a coach to get yourself recruited. Now there's, Huddle, there's Twitter.
Right.
And I think these kids do a great job of using both those platforms to really promote themselves. And maybe to too far of an extent in some cases, where I know, as a coach, I'm starting to see some of these recruitment announcements that are just a little lavish, for my opinion. And, I like more of the old school stuff where you're just going to say you're going to show up on campus and get the work done. But I think you have seen how COVID has changed it. I know there was also a dead period in Division I recruiting where coaches couldn't reach out and speak to an athlete. So you really had to get creative. And I'm sure that affected Division II as well. Where, Division II picks up a lot of the scraps, to be honest, of what Division I kind of leaves over as far as recruiting goes. And I don't want to see scraps as players because you've got amazing players in every division of college athletes. But as far as, stars and kids that are getting recruited by Power 5 schools, maybe they don't get an offer and then they're going to a Division II school. But I think COVID, is like I said, like we said, it's affected everything from pro, college, and high school. And these kids are just really, just like they're having to learn at home, I think they're learning on the fly of how to really change the recruitment game.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're on our second topic talking about recruiting, and for especially high schools, I know here in Massachusetts, there wasn't a high school football season in 2020. So, you have kids that, a lot of times there's some players who just don't physically mature until their senior year because they're 17 or 18 at that point, and then they can really start to look like a college football player. But I'm sure we've both seen players who have skills and are smart and have all the attributes, but don't quite produce on the field until their senior year because they just haven't physically grown into their body. You probably had some seniors this past year in football, and maybe, a lot of schools tried to play soccer this year. Some counties did it, some counties didn't do it, and some other fall sports as well. For those kids, it's got to be tough when you don't have your senior year, or sometimes your junior year is the big year. Your junior year is the year you take the leap, and that didn't happen for a lot of student athletes this past season, this fall season.
I think we talked a little about this, Pat, between each other last week with how there's 4 seasons, especially here in Massachusetts now, due to COVID, how they've broken up the seasons and pushed football into a fall 2 season, which happens at the end of February and the beginning of March, which is a whole different topic that we can talk about, I'm sure, in a different show. But yeah, I think it changes up a lot of things where we talked about how you might have a kid playing potentially 4 sports in 4 seasons there. And whether he's trying to get recruited in soccer or maybe football or who knows, because you've got these kids that are multiple athletes nowadays and play multiple sports. But I think it's been a big change. And like I said, I think they've been learning on the fly and trying to adjust as much as they can. And, I think even for the coaches, they're having to adjust and adjust on the fly, which that's what we do anyway. Hey, we make adjustments during games, so we're going to make adjustments when it comes to recruiting. But I think, instead of, most recently I seen a kid that was a freshman and he was copping himself an offer early as a freshman without any game tape. But I don't think you can see that now in 2020. That's a huge gamble for a coach if you're going to offer a freshman with 0 game film coming out of maybe junior high at this point, because you haven't even got to see him play any varsity football as a freshman until maybe February or March in this state. And I know, and also in California, where there's a bunch of studs, you got a lot of 5-star kids going there. So a lot of schools got to play sports this year, but a lot of schools did not. So I think that is going to affect the recruiting big time when it comes to who's going to get an offer and what school is going to be looking to extend that.
Yeah, it's sort of a jumbled mess as to which schools got to play, which schools didn't. I think there's going to be a lot of kids that maybe got overlooked, might go to D2 or D3 schools that are going to look amazing on the field because they just didn't get the look they should have gotten at a D1 or high level D2 school. So that should be interesting.